Our next topic is on how to use icons in web design. So icons can add a lot of detail and can completely change the look and feel of an entire page or application. And that's why it's so important to know how to use them properly. And probably the most important rule of using icons is to use a very good icon pack and not simply some random icons that you find online. And there are a lot of icon packs available online, both free and paid options. But free icon packs such as Phosphor icons, Ion icons, and Icons 8 can actually take you a long way. For example, the Phosphor icons, which look like this, are actually a very good source of high quality icons. And if you want to make your life really easy when designing, you don't even need to add an external icon pack, you can simply use emojis as well. And in many situations, emojis actually work really well. So that's definitely an option to consider. Now what's important here is that you use only one icon pack. So never mix icons from different icon packs, because otherwise you might end up with a result like this. So here you have 6 icons and one of them looks completely off. Can you guess which one that is? So, of course, it's this one. It has a completely different style. So all these other icons are line icons and they are very round, while this other icon is kind of like squared or boxy and it's also filled. So this icon style really is completely different from the rest, and that can be quite distracting and take the user's attention away from your content, because they might then only look at this weird and strange looking icon. And of course, that's not what you want. Now, next up, you should only use icons that are in the SVG format or something called icon fonts. And that's important because these type of icons are so-called vector-based, which means that we can scale them indefinitely without they getting pixelated. So they will not get unsharp no matter how big we make the icons. On the other hand, we have more regular images like JPEGs or PNGs. And so we should never use these formats for icons because we cannot scale them. So they become unsharp as we make them bigger. And this is mainly a problem on high definition screens where there is a scale factor of 2x. So just like we talked about in the previous lecture on images. Remember that? So when you're searching for icons, it might be tempting to simply Google some images and then use the results for your design. However, these results will always be images like JPEGs or PNGs. And so therefore, as I just mentioned, these will not scale. So they are not good candidates for using in your design. Also, using images from Google directly is many times in violation of copyright laws. And so that is never a good idea anyway, right? So always go for professional icon packs, which are usually always in SVG or even in icon fonts. Okay, but now you need to know how to actually choose between different icon packs. So how do you do that? Well, what matters most is that these icons need to adjust to your website personality once again. And the easiest way of doing that is to use an icon pack which has a similar roundness and weight to your typography, which is important because icons are many times placed along with text. So let's see some examples here. And the first one has a very round typography, especially in the headings there. And so therefore the icons are also very round, right? Even the shapes that they are in are not even just round, they're also a bit irregular. And so all of that will contribute to the overall roundness of the design. Now, on the other hand, on the right side, we have a very squared or boxy typeface. So it's not round at all, right? It's completely different than the typeface on the left side. And so therefore the icons are also completely different. They are quite squared and so not round at all here. And so they combine perfect with all the text here. Now, some website personalities might actually not need icons at all, like the minimalist or bold personality, But again, more about personalities a bit later. So by then we will have a big overview of what to do for each of the personalities, for each of the ingredients. But now, moving on, let's actually learn when we can use icons in our design. So one very common use case is to use icons in order to provide visual assistance to text, such like in all of these examples. So you have some piece of text, and then you have a small icon somewhere close to that text, which basically makes it easier to scan and understand the text, and also provides some interesting visual detail and, again, visual assistance to the text itself. So again, this is a very, very common thing to do, and I'm sure you have seen it on all kinds of websites that you visit on your day-to-day basis. Now, probably the most common use case of all for icons is to build feature blocks. So feature blocks are something like this, where you usually have an icon at the top, then some smaller heading, and then a description. So the goal of these feature blocks is to basically describe the features of a certain product or service. And so icons in that are extremely helpful, because if they're well chosen, then the user might not even have to read the text. For example, in this first feature blocks, we can see immediately, without even reading the text, that there is some bedrooms, that there is some furniture, some cleaning going on, and also that there's some Wi-Fi involved. So these days in modern web design, basically all websites have some kind of feature blocks like this, where they use some icons to provide a visual information about each of their features. Now, another situations where icons are used all the time is together with actions. So for example, on buttons or on menus in web applications like Twitter or Spotify or many other applications that I'm sure you have seen. And once more, the goal of using icons in this situation is to provide visual assistance to the text. So basically to make it easier and faster for the user to understand what each action is doing, sometimes maybe even without reading the text at all. So we all use the web every single day, and by doing that, we have learned the meaning of many of these icons. And so, for example, here in this Twitter example, the notification or the messages or the bookmarks or even the profile, we don't even need the text for those icons, right? We would immediately know what each of these options does. However, we should still label the icons with text and not just simply use icons and call it a day. So many users might not know the meaning of these icons, and also some of the icons are not always that clear. And so therefore it is a good practice to always use icons together with the actual action text. The only exceptions is if there is really no space or if all the icons are 100% clear. Also, when you're building some navigation, you should be consistent and not use only icons for some of the elements and then use only text for the other ones. So that looks a bit strange, and so you should avoid a situation like this. Now finally, another pretty common use case for icons is to use them as bullet points. So just like we have here in these examples, and most of the times we're just talking about some small check marks, and they are included by default basically in all icon packs. So this can be, once again, a nice way of adding some more visual detail to your designs. All right, so we learned what icons to use, when to use icons, and now let's quickly talk about how to actually use icons well. So as a first guideline, if you want to keep icons neutral, you can set them as the same color as your text. So just like in this example, the text is basically black or white, and so if you set the icons to a similar color, then they will not draw a lot of attention. They will stay a little bit out of the way and let the user focus more on the text and simply be there to provide some visual assistance in the background. On the other hand, if you want to draw more attention, you can use different colors for your icons. So for example, you can make the icon your brand color, or if you want to draw even more attention, then you can also use different colors for different icons, like these two examples here at the bottom. Next up, do not confuse your users by using icons that don't really make sense. So the icons that you choose in your design should actually make sense and fit the text or the action that you want to convey. So in this design right here, I think there are a couple of examples where the icon doesn't really make a lot of sense. So the icon doesn't really fit the text that we see here, and so in cases like this, it's really just confusing. For example, what does enterprise software have to do with that pie chart? That's not really clear, right? And so this icon does not really provide any visual assistance to the text, because just by looking at the icon, you will not know what this feature is all about. Now, if the icon pack that you chose does not have a fitting icon for your text, it might be time to look maybe for another icon pack, or you can also adjust your text maybe to something else which is more fitting to one of the icons that is included in your icon pack. Okay? Now, finally, the last guideline here is that you should not make icons larger than what they were designed for. Now, this can actually be a little bit subjective and it might be hard to perceive, but if you take a look at this example here with me, then you might agree that the icons that are on the right look kind of off, right? So, for example, the lines look way too large, even though the icon itself actually has a nice size, which is not oversized. But again, the lines are too thick, and therefore it looks very weird and unnatural. Now, one of the possible solutions for this is to keep the icons smaller, but enclose them in a bigger shape. And so therefore, the overall icon will basically be the shape plus the icon itself, and they are now just as big as in the right example, but without looking unnatural. Now, on the other hand, some icons were clearly designed to being used in a big way, like these ones here. And we can identify icons like that, so icons that we can make really large, by the lot of detail that they contain. And usually icons like these also use very thin lines, which keeps the icon light as we scale it up. All right, so these are my 11 guidelines for using icons. And so now let's use some of them in the real world right in the next lecture.